A new Quinnipiac poll shows that independent presidential candidate RFK Jr., Robert Kennedy Jr., of course, is drawing in a massive amount of support for a third-party candidate. Let's be clear. Now, the survey found that in a hypothetical three-way matchup in 2024, Kennedy would get the support of 22% of registered voters. Former President Donald Trump would get 36%. And President Joe Biden would get 39%. Now look, prior to RFK Jr. registering as an independent, he was previously running as a Democrat, effectively serving as a primary challenge to Biden. Biden wasn't doing well. I mean, I don't think he's doing that great now either, but there were some polls that showed that Trump was leading by a couple points, or they were neck and neck. But now, according to recent polling, and this isn't the first poll, there's now 2 polls that show that with RFK as the independent candidate, he actually takes more support from Trump as opposed to Biden. Okay, so a USA Today Suffolk poll that came out last month also showed that Kennedy may hurt Trump more than Biden. And according to that poll, Trump would have had a narrower lead if JFK Jr. hadn't switched his party from Democrat to independent. So do you think Biden should celebrate this? Or I've heard some news about Team MAGA, people in Trump's campaign reaching out to RFK Jr. to basically complain. But what are your thoughts on all of this?
I don't think RFK Jr. cares what Joe Biden or Donald Trump think about him running. And that's why he's running. Like, oh, I got a phone call from Trump. He wants me out of the race. Like, I'm running against you, bud. And that makes sense. If you ask any of the Republicans that question, they will just be like, well, I'm here to help. I don't want to be against Trump. I want to be for him. Those guys are going to respond differently to questions from Trump. And they'll probably respond like, well, what cabinet post can I get? But in this situation, like, what a fascinating, voter base that would say yes to would you vote for RFK Jr.? Well, that voter base, yeah. Well, I'm just thinking it's going to be like, it's going to be people who listen to like Joe Rogan and Theo Vaughn who listen to those podcasts. I mean, Tucker and Theo were talking about partying with RFK Jr. the other day. And they were like, oh man, I like hanging out with that guy. He's kind of fun. He's cool. He tells like it is, man. So you've got that contention. You've got people that just see the word Kennedy and they're for it. And then as you used to have with Perot, you had a lot of people who in like the preliminary polling are like, well, I hate those two. So give me any name and I'm for it. If it's the third name, I'm along. The question is, how does that shake out when people do go to cast their ballots?
Right. So just to give you all the background info on Ross Perot, there was some analysis written about this latest Quinnipiac poll on MSNBC's website. And I wouldn't share this with you unless they mentioned Ross Perot, because I think this history is important to keep in mind as the election progresses. So some see Kennedy's Quinnipiac numbers as a sign that he could be the next Ross Perot, the Texas billionaire who won 19% of the popular vote in 1992. But recall that Perot's polling numbers, much closer to the election, greatly overestimated his performance. In the summer of 1992, Perot was polling as the frontrunner in the race against President George H.W. Bush and his Democratic challenger, Bill Clinton. I didn't even realize he was the frontrunner ever in that race.
Those are really tough because like Herman Cain was the front runner, Mike Gravel was the front runner at some point in the elections.
Right.
The closer it gets to when you're actually voting, like Santorum, like the more interesting it becomes, right? Because everyone just kind of has their thing, and it really underscores the way that people, at least back then. You also have to remember, like this was what, 92. Before 92, you would get like landslide elections and there were no like red states and blue states when it came to presidential
92.
elections.
I want 92 back so bad.
Do you want
the 90s were so great. I know people are gonna say that I'm misremembering and I have rose-colored glasses on when it comes to the 90s. No, I don't. The 90s had its issues, way better than what we're dealing with today. I just
remember driving, listening to Smash Mouth, and I was like, the music is so bad right now that things must be going pretty well in the world. Like, I remember that was it.
Totally.
Like, this is all the songs are so boring. I love them, It's so insane. Like,
I thought Smash Mouth was pretty lit back then.
It was great, but there was nothing, like I was like, oh, and then I go to the classic rock station and people are like, oh my God, that was a soulful ballad that I just won't find anymore.
Now classic rock is considered like the Beastie Boys. That's how ancient we are. Anyway, okay, let's get back to the topic at hand though, because I want to make a point about what you said in regard to Tucker Carlson and his love for RFK Jr. Isn't it kind of amazing how propping up RFK Jr. actually ends up helping Joe Biden? I don't think they realize that. I don't think they're doing that intentionally, but according to the polls, that's what's happening here.
Yeah, so what happened was in the interaction that I listened to, because I presented bonus episode yesterday, I listened to pretty much the entire podcast. I'm talking like over 2 hours of it. Even Tucker was like, well, those are the people who vote for Biden. People who are voting for Trump might switch over and go for RFK Jr. because he has that vibe of like the libertarian, like both all mainstream media is nonsense. I like his style. I hate the establishment. There's a lot of people like that. And Tucker was like, it's just people who would vote for Trump, obviously. And Theo's like, I know people who would vote for Biden or RFK. They're having a lot of trouble deciding which one to do. And I think that might be a holdover of like the Kennedy name and something to do with being an environmental lawyer. And a lot of people just being like, I'm not a big Trump guy. I'm not a big Biden guy. You got these.
There's a lot of that.
But like, I can't with RFK Jr. It's just too much.
Yeah, I'm not impressed with him. I desperately want someone to be impressed with, but I am coming up short on that. Now, if he wasn't running, right, what does that mean for Biden and Trump? Biden is narrowly ahead of Trump by 1 point. Again, assuming RFK Jr. isn't running as a third party candidate. So it would be 47% to Trump's 46%, but it's also within the margin of error in a head-to-head matchup. And what really stood out the most about this poll was where the majority of support was coming from. And it was from independent voters, really the kingmakers in these elections at this point, considering how polarized everything is. So if you look at the Quinnipiac poll, it'll show you that among independents, RFK Jr. enjoys like the highest percentage of support from the independent voters. Among independents, 36% support Kennedy, 31% back Trump, and 30% back Biden. So it kind of speaks to what you were talking about, Brett. It's like the independent voter who typically doesn't really commit to one party or another and usually is disillusioned by both parties. And so in this case, they're like, I don't know, there's a third option. He seems okay, except he doesn't, in my opinion.
Yeah, and right now, I did some analysis like a week ago, but like without Kennedy, the independent voter breaks for Trump pretty hard right now. And that's gotta terrify the hell out of the Biden campaign.
It should. It definitely should.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.